Hi guys, this is me Samyukta Nair and welcome to a new video on my channel History Episodes with Samyukta Nair. So today's video is going to be a little different from what I usually put out because in this video I'm basically going to be sharing some recommendations of my favorite historical books for any of you history lovers out there. So I'm going to be sharing 2 non-fiction recommendations and 3 fiction. These are by some of my favorite authors ever, Amitav Ghosh and William Dalrymple. So, of course, I will be sharing the usual kind of videos that I make, but I just thought it would be interesting to make a book recommendation video because then, if any of you actually want to read about specific events or get to know more about certain periods in history, this would help you, this would give you a point of reference as to where to get started. So, first, I'm going to talk about the non-fiction. So this is the first book of William Dalrymple's that I ever read. He has a very interesting background himself. He is Scottish, but he lives in India outside of Delhi with his family, and he has basically been here for many years now. In fact, his children all grew up in India, and his specific areas of interest are the East India Company, the Mughal Empire, and Eastern religion. I was fortunate enough to attend a talk by him recently, and I was able to get this book autographed by him, which makes it all the more precious to me. Now, The Anarchy, as you can tell, is about the East India Company, how it came to be, how it became a part of the Indian landscape, how it initially started as it was the first joint stock company in the world, and also how it was initially only for trade purposes, but gradually it gave way to the colonization of most of India by the British. This book, it looks a little intimidating because it's really thick, but I can tell you, I read this in about a week. It was an extremely fascinating read, and Dalrymple's prose is quite easy to follow. He writes in a very novelistic way almost. I mean, you feel like you're reading about, you forget that you're reading about actual historical characters and you feel like you're really getting caught up in, a novel, a historical novel. And in addition to that, the book has really great paintings and photographs which are from actual historical archives, and you see such richly illustrated battle scenes such as this, which really gives you an idea as to what it must have been like at that point of time. And of course, there are these portraits. This is Edmund Burke, Philip Francis, Warren Hastings. All these names must be familiar to anyone who studied history in Indian schools and colleges, because we have learnt about all of them in passing. But if you would definitely like to know more about them in detail, I recommend reading this book. And it's not a glorification of the British Empire. I would like to say that William Dalrymple does not glorify the British Empire in any way. This is Shah Alam II, the Mughal emperor. So, yeah, William Dalrymple is not somebody, he is not one of those Brits who tries to whitewash, the role they played in all the killing and all the looting and plundering in India. He has a very matter of fact, sorry, the cover came off. He has a very matter of fact and clear cut approach towards it, and he accepts everything that was done on the British side. And I wouldn't say that he has an overly Indophile view either. He is basically quite moderate. I wouldn't say it's possible for any historian to be completely objective, but if you want to read as close as it gets to an objective version of the history of the East India Company in India, then this is the book for you. Next, The White Mughals. Again, it is told in Dalrymple's typical style of as objective as possible, and again this book is very well written and also contains several actual paintings which are extremely beautiful. Believe it or not, these children who you see dressed in typical Hyderabadi Nizami wear are actually the children of a Hyderabadi woman and an East India Company officer. So this book is basically called White Mughals because it is about a lot of East India Company men who came to India and completely fell in love with the Indian way of life and even converted to Hinduism or Islam, and they gave up their British way of living and went native, so to speak. In Tudor England, it was known as they went Turk. So it's an extremely interesting read about a community which we hardly know about in India. In fact, the East India Company was so afraid that a lot of people would defect from the company and become part of the Indian landscape, that they started making rules to ensure that the offspring of such people who married Indian women and had Anglo-Indian children would not get good jobs and would not get promotions in or any position in the East India Company. And they also made it quite difficult for them to assimilate into British society. So, but still, this book is filled with some incredible love stories, and not so love stories, but also a very interesting anthropological viewpoint as to how the East viewed the West and the West viewed the East, and how some people really walked the tightrope between the two. So it has a little bookmark here because I'm still reading it, but yeah, it's definitely worth it. Now coming to the fiction. So I knew that there was this trilogy by Amitav Ghosh, but I never read it till one of my professors at university recommended it, because he had done his research in world literatures on this trilogy. He had done his PhD on this trilogy, and I'm so glad I read it. The first book is The Sea of Poppies. As you can see, this book has a very nautical theme. It is about people from India who were taken as indentured laborers to the Caribbean, and they began working on plantations over there. So this mainly has to do with how various characters from different backgrounds came to the same conclusion of boarding a ship for the Caribbean and their turbulent journey over there, and it's very, very interesting. Then there is Flood of Fire. This, if I remember correctly, also it deals with the same characters, but it's like we see what happens next. And we also see a lot about the Parsi trade in India and China, how Parsis were a huge part of the trade scene from Bombay and Gujarat, and they had established trade links with Africa, with Europe, with China, and many of them led double lives. Many of them had their Indian Parsi families. Many of them had many traders, not just Parsi traders, but many traders in general also had families in Sri Lanka or China. They had their Chinese wives and children who they could never really publicly acknowledge, but it was a result of their lifestyle of moving around so much. And I'm not saying that it was right, but it has been very sensitively dealt with in this book, and what happened to those children. And this is another excellent book. It winds up the trilogy River of Smoke, and all these books have won prizes, and they definitely deserve them. They have been shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize and the Economist Crossword Book Award and the Man Asian Literary Prize. And this book in particular was a finalist of the Man Booker Prize in 2015. So I would definitely say that this is also a part of Indian history that is less known, because this is not really something we learn to a great extent in school about Indian indentured laborers who were taken to the Caribbean and made to work, and also the trade between the Parsi community and various other countries. So if you want to read about that and how the threads of the lives of so many people involved in these communities were connected, I would definitely recommend reading these 3 books. Do read them in order, and it's definitely going to be worth it. So these are my book recommendations for now, my historical book recommendations. I will definitely come back with more, but for now I think this will do. So enjoy reading them, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And if you would like more recommendations, don't hesitate to send me a DM or to comment on this video.